Guys, on this episode of Himology, I'm doing something completely different. I did a fantastic interview with Valdo, and I think it has a lot of benefit that you're going to want to hear about it. So I'm stealing the interview that I did, and we're putting it on my channel, and it's this week's episode of Himology. I hope you enjoy.
Enjoy.
A woman in her pleasure is way more effective than Viagra.
Welcome to The Vibrant Couple. Today I have invited Shari James, expert on erectile dysfunction. Shari, are all men affected by ED?
I usually see it kick in between the ages of 38 and 42. Some degree of change, but that does not mean it's normal.
What is normal? Why is ED happening?
It depends on someone's lifestyle, how they treat their body, if they're able to listen to the wisdom of their body, and with what level of consciousness they approach sexuality.
Does porn intake increase ED?
100%. And that's why I am seeing young men in their 20s approaching me with their erectile dysfunction problem. So just imagine later in life, that does get worse.
Out of the men who come to see you with ED, how many are in shame and try to hide it?
There's a distinct correlation between shame, guilt, and embarrassment when it comes to erectile dysfunction. And I would say that shame is probably the number one emotion that guys experience.
Please say more.
Whenever you're activating sexual energy, it's like you've now put a magnifying glass on your internal self. So I like to say that it's like being an overnight sensation, where suddenly the media is taking snapshots, the paparazzi are out to get you. So suddenly everything is magnified. So if there already is some degree of shame, shame is a very low emotion. I think if shame were to have a body language, shame would be very pulled inward.
I'm seeing too many men withdrawn and not in touch with themselves and burdened by, all social and cultural expectations, and very few men having done a good job with processing their shame.
Yeah, and if they don't process that, it's going to show up in their sexuality. And the reason I say that is because every now and then, a guy might have what I call a wonky performance. Things just aren't lining up. It's kind of hit or miss. So every now and then that does happen to men at any age. And how a man reacts or responds to that wacky performance is what's already living inside of him. And his reaction tells him that, because sexual energy is the powerhouse that's going to unlock his deeper emotional state.
With the couples I work with, when they come to me with wonky days, I tell them that the worst thing they can do is to stop play and become disconnected, and that the most important thing to do is to keep playing, stay connected, and keep their sexual exploration, although it could be different than what they had in mind initially.
Yeah, and I think, women, whether they admit it or not, naturally look to men for leadership, especially in the bedroom. And so if a man is having a wonky performance and he's like shriveling, like shutting down and shriveling up, that's going to create a disconnection in their connection. And then her insecurities are going to come up about, oh, is it me and this and that. So the man is actually in a position of leadership in terms of how he responds to ED, whether it be chronic or occasional.
Would it be fair to say that ED is a problem affecting the couple and thereby a couple problem?
Erectile dysfunction, although it impacts the female aspect or the female partner relationship, it essentially is his problem and is his responsibility. So taking ownership and leadership over that, I feel, is a critical thing to do.
What do you see as the root causes of ED?
Number one is absolutely stress. 100%. I call it the man behind the curtain, kind of like the Wizard of Oz. When I do my assessments on the 13 root causes of erectile dysfunction, stress, well, I would say the nervous system category comes up the strongest in everyone. So, hands down, stress.
I learned recently that I had wrongly understood that men produce less and less testosterone as they age, but that it is not true that they produce the same amount throughout their lives. But as they age, their stress level often increases, and stress/cortisol is a testosterone killer.
Couple things on that. So the formula for the endocrine system and the immune system is it does start with the nervous system. So it's nervous system plus endocrine system equals immune system. So stress impacts the hormonal system, and that's why we're seeing men and women younger and younger having lower testosterone, estrogen, progesterone, and going on bioidentical hormones. And so I've been doing this for 18 years. I don't find that low testosterone is the problem. I'm sure there's many doctors in men's clinics that would disagree with me, and I'm okay with that because I work with men of all ages. Some have low testosterone, some do not. And it's fairly insignificant. So I will say that with confidence.
I'm really glad to hear you say that, because often when I see testosterone advertising, there is a part of me that cringes. And so I'm pretty sure that it does help some men, but it feels more like a fad, something that is there more to enrich the people selling it.
That's what's the mainstream narrative, is that it's testosterone. And that's why all these, clinics have popped up too. So with very aggressive testosterone protocols. And then they come to Shari James, the emergency room, and they told me all this testosterone would work and it's not. And I'm like, well, yeah, because as I'm going through your root causes, there's 8 other things. So testosterone, not too significant. I will say that testosterone can give a feeling of fullness, but I don't see it as like the cause of erectile dysfunction.
In your holistic assessment, you look at 13 root causes. What do you look at next?
After that stage, then we have to look at, is this going to be mild, moderate, or complex to heal? The number one indicator of whether it's going to be mild, moderate, or complex to heal is actually the morning erection. So I work from the inside out, and what we do is we build up the morning erection. That takes care of 90% of the problem, and then the rest can be easily troubleshooted. So I'm coming at this from a reverse, like an internal perspective, not, oh, this isn't getting hard, but like what's going on with your morning erection. It's almost like I could just throw out the 13 root causes in a way and just ask, hey, what's going on with your morning erection? And then I have my own scale for that. So in terms of how we move forward, it really depends on how good a man's morning erection is, because that's, again, and I'm going to share something that's not mainstream. It's my observation and an inherent knowing from 18 years of doing this, which is the morning erection has to do with a relaxation response. So how good the quality of sleep is, how much stress is in the body, how much stress is not in the body. It also has to do with good circulation, and then it also has to do with how much sexual energy is in the gas tank, and it also has to do with what is the man's emotional state.
Exactly the way I see it. I have the impression that too many men, when they masturbate on porn, they breathe very shallowly, and as a result, create poor sexual neural pathways.
So you start to train it's like brain nervous system response to a high stimulus boop. And so every time you do that, you're actually training your body for that. You're also training the visual cortex to need a very high level of stimulation in order to get off. So that's why I say porn is a causation of erectile dysfunction, because you're not going to find that heightened physical, even sometimes physical attractiveness, in the real world. Or women might not be, maybe they're more quiet sexually, and you don't hear all that fake breathing and screaming and all that, and then the guy's like, oh, what's wrong with me? So yeah, I'm not, I have love and compassion and respect for women who do porn, but I personally do not support porn.
I so agree with you. I see the porn industry not only creating a fake impression of what sex really is, for example, very few women orgasm just from penetration, but also that they make it more difficult to have real sex with a real partner.
Well, sex itself is organic. So you mentioned the word industry, right? So now we're talking about the industrialization of sex, the profiteering and the manipulation of men to enhance other people's bottom lines. Essentially, it doesn't have to be sacred in a perfect world. It's a sacred act of connection and an organic experience. It's sweaty and smelly and dirty, and there's body parts, and there's fluids, and there's pheromones, and there's visuals, and you're hearing things, and you're tasting things. And so that's what the body really responds to. But if you're programming the brain and the neural circuitry with this other experience, don't be surprised if you're having ED.
Do you require your clients to stop watching porn?
They have to stop. They have to stop. And I tell people before they work with me, are you ready to stop watching porn? I typically work with someone for 3 months, so I can say, are you ready to stop watching it for 3 months? Because after that, you do what you want. I'm here to get you up and running, right? So everyone has to stop when they work with me.
Is your work different with men who are single compared to men who are in partnership?
If they do have a partner, it's nice when they have a supportive partner. I do find that the results are better with a supportive partner. But no, plenty of single men do, because there's a phenomena where guys that haven't dated in a long time, they're starting to get results in my program, and there's certain things that I look for, and I'm like, okay, get out there. Like, you're ready to date, like you're ready to take this show on the road. So it's fun, because then it elevates them back into the dating world. And going back to porn for a second, I do feel that it makes men lazy. Why should I go through all the trouble of dating and all these other things if I can just sit on my phone and, do my thing?
Porn does make men lazy, and that's a big problem. And so the couples that come to me often have quite a bit of a resentment, and also are struggling to find their turn on with each other. Do you have any insights for the women of men, partnered with men who have ED?
If a woman is holding resentment, then she's not in her full pleasure, and she's doing herself a disservice. So it's like, as a woman, I really see your pleasure completely independent of a man. Living in your pleasure as a woman is empowering as far as how you make decisions. Does that create a sensation of a full body yes, or like a pleasurable experience? How are you treating your body? How are you moving through the world? Are you rushing like this, or are you like stopping and smelling the roses? What kind of fabrics are you wearing on your skin? Like, pleasure is not just sexual. And then as far as, sexual pleasure, give that to yourself and share it with your man. One of my sayings is a woman in her pleasure is way more effective than Viagra.
Absolutely. Please notice how Shari was glowing when she was talking from her feminine.
Ooh.
In my view, too many women overstress about the external physical beauty. Please tell us about the difference between external beauty and inner glow and how that relates to being in one's feminine and in one's pleasure.
As you get to know someone, they become better looking or worse looking. You become more turned on to them or more turned off to them. I know that for men, their first cue is visual. So we can't say that that's not true, right? Like there's that saying that men fall in love with their eyes and women fall in love with their ears. And that's actually rooted in a very deep truth. So a woman who's like, who the heck's a 10, Like, I'm not a 10. Like, who's a 10? But a woman in her pleasure is intoxicating regardless. And there's women who, because they're overweight, are not feeling entitled to their own pleasure. And that really makes me very sad because pleasure doesn't have a weight capacity to it.
And does pleasure have an age limit?
It does not.
As our bodies naturally age, I find it very important that couples learn to prioritize sex, learn to continue learning to play with each other sexually, and to turn each other on.
I love that you said play because I feel like so much playfulness has gotten taken out of sexuality, and it's like this very like, okay, it's Thursday at 6, put it in, I gotta do the dishes after. It's like, holy shit, are you kidding me? It's our innate inheritance, of pleasure. And if it's important to someone, they're gonna make time for it. Just that simple. If it's important to a couple, they're gonna make time for it. They're gonna figure it out.
How about dealing with a wonky performance?
Well, I have a recommendation, but it doesn't happen overnight. I've noticed that it's a process. My recommendation is when you have a wonky performance, before you have a wonky performance, you have an agreement in your relationship that if it's wonky, you're going to high five each other. High five! I couldn't get it up. All right, cool. Like, let me pleasure you, and then I'm always looking for counterbalance. There's these habitual responses. So a really big counterbalance is like high five. And so that starts to break up some of the noise and the emotions behind it. But I've noticed that I could tell someone that I'm working to, and they might look at me like I'm insane, and it's going to take them a number of weeks to be able to get to that point. It does seem to be a process.
If I get it, it sometimes takes a while to rebuild confidence and find the ability to be playful again.
I don't know if it's a confidence thing, because if you're going into sex in the state of being of confidence, you're much less likely to have a wonky performance. I think what it is they have to process emotionally and mentally to get to that point. Right? Emotions are like a charge. And so it takes time to release those charges before you can get to high five.
So releasing that charge so conversations and play make that wonky days are no longer the end of the world.
They're not the end of the world when it's occasional. I mean, if it's chronic, then there needs to be action taken on it, because that's revealing there's several imbalances going on in the body and perhaps the relationship. So if something is chronic, yes, you should pay attention to it. But if it's every now and then, just try to high five it out and like pleasure your woman, and you might come back online. I think what a lot of couples do is like they do like a nervous system withdrawal, like a collapsing, a disconnect, a shutdown. The other thing is like a woman will then like try to give the man oral sex and like suck it back to life, which all that does is adds more pressure. You're actually better off just taking some space, relaxing, give each other massages, or pleasing your woman and just seeing if he comes back to life. It often does.
So pressure is the enemy of pleasure, and erections are important, but they are not the only thing in the bedroom.
Yes, absolutely.
Shari, any final words of wisdom or recommendations for our listeners?
Well, I want you to think about, first of all, what is the quality of your morning erections? That's a great place to start. I already know that if they're not great quality, then what you're doing is you're forcing. You're watching porn to force the erection. You might have gone towards pills to forcing erection. So the second question to ask yourself is, are you forcing your body to do something that it does not want to do? And then the third, no, I don't want to say it's a question. The third thing I'm going to say is, I know without a doubt, the body is wise. And if you're forcing an erection by going against the wisdom of your body, you're always going to lose in the end. So the body is a self-healing mechanism. And by learning the root causes of your specific firmness challenge, this can be healed without pills and injections and all that stuff. And doing this for 18 years, seen it over and over. So it's a deep truth that I can say with absolute certainty.
Well, Shari, that was a wonderful conversation. Thanks for joining us, and please keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Here is a video Shari made on not forcing erections. Here is a video on soft penetration she did with Susan Morgan-Taylor. And here is my interview of Susan a few months ago. And here is a video on helping men better understanding what women want in the bedroom.
Hey you, hey guy, who's learning about sexual health, mixed in with some tantra, mixed in with some 5 elements of Chinese medicine and some Western medicine. I want to let you know something. I would love it if you would hit my subscribe button and the notification bell. That way you're going to know when new content is posted every Friday.